Welcome to the SMB Community Podcast with hosts Amy Babinchak, James Kernan, and Carl Polachek. Produced by Kernan Consulting and for the international MSP community. We are dedicated to making every IT professional a successful IT professional. The SMB Community Podcast is brought to you by Kernan Consulting, your mergers and acquisitions experts. Since 2006, we've been through over 30 transactions, and just this past year, we've been involved in over 6. So if you're interested in either buying, selling, or valuation information, please reach out. I'd love to talk with you. There's a ton of activity going on, and you can be a part of it. Reach out for more information at kernanconsulting.com. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the SMB Community Podcast. It's James Kernan with Kernan Consulting, and I'm here with my good friend, Amy Babinchak. Hey, Amy, good morning.
Good morning, James.
Happy Monday.
Yeah, I know. I'm not feeling it yet, but I will.
Well, maybe I am after my third cup of coffee.
Oh, yeah. Here you go.
I'm on a roll. Yeah, you know what? I kind of feel the same way. Normally, Mondays, I try to be a little bit more chipper than this, but the weather was spectacular, and then now it's going to cool off here in the Midwest this week. So I'm not very excited about that. So maybe it's a little harder to stay motivated today. Oh, well. All right. Well, hey, we got a ton to talk about today. Let's start off with question of the week. We got a couple questions that came in, but I'm going to take this one for now, and then Amy and I will try to dissect this. But we're talking a lot about AI lately. So the question that came in is, how can artificial intelligence help increase my sales? How can AI help increase my sales? And I'm going to defer to you because I think you're teaching a class on that this week.
Well, that's part of what we're teaching. I think it's going to be a huge opportunity. There was a study done, and they came out and said, this is a $600 billion opportunity for MSPs. That's like double the size that the cloud was for MSPs. So that's how huge this is going to be. You know how dramatically the cloud changed your MSP. The AI, same thing's going to happen. But to me, the AI stuff that's coming out there, it plays straight into the MSP's wheelhouse. It needs monitoring, management, security, right? Your customers are going to use it, and the MSP needs to be there to help them use it in a smart way.
Yep.
So that's the essence of my class. Actually, we're recording this on a week before you're probably listening to it. So my class is starting today. If you guys still want to join in, go over to thirdtier.net, and you might miss the first session, but it's all recorded and all the materials, and I'll send all that stuff to you so you can catch up real quick. But this is such an enormous opportunity for MSPs. So how is it going to help your sales, right? So now we know it's going to play straight into your wheelhouse, already taking advantage of all the things you're good at. But how's it going to help your sales? Well, there's a million sales tools out there that are leveraging AI. That's not how it's going to help your sales. So how it's really going to help your sales is by you telling your prospects that you're on top of this, right? They do have a concern. They may not have talked to you about it yet, but they are concerned of whether they're doing the right things to be in the position to take advantage of AI in their business. And that's where you want to tell them, yeah, I'm on, unlike all those other MSPs that you've been talking to, we're on top of this AI thing, right?
Right.
We're gonna help you use it smarter. We're gonna find out, we're gonna manage all these AI apps that are coming into your business and make sure data isn't leaking out to people's personal email addresses. Maybe that's how they signed up for those apps. So lots of different ways for you to help your client with it. And just being the first to market on that is going to help your sales.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so important as MSPs, and most of us channel wide are introverts. Most MSP business owners are super technical. They don't like public speaking, but this is a great opportunity to talk about something about. Just do a little research, start playing around with this yourself. But back to Amy's point, I think it's important to be viewed in your local community as the thought leader on AI, on security, it does play right into our wheelhouse, but I love the idea of using this as a competitive advantage in your business to separate you by educating customers on AI, what they should do and what they shouldn't do, right? What
Mhm.
both of those, but use that as a differentiator to stand out uh, in head and shoulders above the competition, because this is so new. People are really interested. There's people doing research all over the place. So, yeah, one other interesting point though I think I want to make, because I've heard people ask this question before. Is this going to reduce my headcount? And we talked a little bit about this the last couple weeks, but we see AI is really making existing employees more efficient, more effective, just making them better. It's not going to replace employees, not quite yet, but employees, if they're trained on these tools, I think will be more efficient. There was an article I just read over the weekend that talked about just sales admin tasks. At least 30% of them can be uh, taken over by AI, just helping you with your reports, with your content creation, with your strategy, with email content, marketing content. There's all sorts of things that you could use AI for, but, even just simple, sales navigator with LinkedIn. And that's a good example. That tool's getting more and more sophisticated, and I like the direction that that's going. It's something to check into if you're not using it now. But, I think my point would be it's gonna make existing employees more efficient and more effective, and I think by using AI in marketing, to Amy's point, that it's gonna help differentiate you. So I love that point.
Yeah, everyone's always looking for their differentiator, right?
Right.
And you go to conference and they're like, "Oh, you got to have your unique selling proposition. Buy our product so that you can all have the same unique selling proposition." But part of it is letting your clients know what your skills are, letting them know that you're on top of the new things. So if you start marketing now that you've got a plan in place to help them manage and implement AI, um, that right there is gonna set your company apart from the competition probably for the next 3 years. And you see your unique selling proposition. It doesn't have to be the same thing forever, never, never, right? You'll have one for a few years, and the next thing will come along, and you'll develop an expertise in that, and then that'll be the thing that you want to start to promote out there. Always setting your company ahead of that next wave that's coming along, so that you're surfing and the rest of your competition's catching up.
Said, said. So if you haven't signed up for Amy's class or checked out the info, we'll drop the information in the show notes or at the end of the program to make sure you can check that out.
Yeah,
Think
let me say something about AI replacing people, though.
Yeah.
I think I think this is a big I think it's a big problem. I think it's just the wrong way to think about things, as you said. It should make your people more efficient, and you cited that 30%. To me, that's not I don't need 30% fewer people then. What I need is, I'm now freeing up those people to focus on the things that the AI isn't doing, which is going to be the personal interaction, right? It's going to be the creative, it's going to be the personal, it's going to be the things that humans are good at. So if you structure this so that AI does the stuff that computers are good at and people do the stuff that people are good at, then I think you're really going to end up maximizing AI to its fullest extent. And that's where you're going to see the benefits to your business.
Yeah, that face-to-face interaction, good old-fashioned phone calls, the coffee meeting. Yeah, I like that. I like that point. That's excellent. So, couldn't agree with you more. Sales is easy. You just have to be in the right place at the right time. So by being more efficient with all the admin tasks that we have in sales, theoretically, you create more at bats because you have more time to make phone calls, go on meetings, and that uh, important thing that AI can't do. So
Mhm.
yeah, good point. Good point. Well, hey, a lot of other stuff going on out in the channel. A couple other quick highlights I thought was kind of interesting. Um, the United States Department of Justice sues to block the HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and Juniper deal. That was just a little deal happening, only 14 billion in the background. I don't know if any uh, Juniper network fans out there, but the federal government feels that it's going to block competition. They like the head-to-head competition of these companies. So I'm not much of a fan of seeing the government kind of interfere with things like that, but I'm really indifferent on this one. I just thought it was an interesting headline to highlight. I'm not sure if you saw that out there, but
Yeah, I mean that Juniper and HP Enterprise is a space that I don't play in, but so it definitely won't affect me. However, these I guess it's kind of striking that balance. Yeah, how big does a company become before it becomes a monopoly in a particular market space? There was just a denying of a deal of a couple of large grocery chains because it would have left huge swaths of the country with only a single grocery store chain. And in that case, there's no price competition. And I guess it's the same thing here. You've got two huge businesses in Juniper and NHP Enterprise that make a lot of the same equipment. And if they become the same company, then where's the price competition? I think that's always the thing that they're trying to balance, and we hope they make the right decisions in that.
um, yeah, thought that was interesting. Something else that caught my eye: the Ingram Micro VP of Services stepped down abruptly. Paul Hager, he was the VP of Services for several years, and again another abrupt separation, step down. And I think that happened on January 24th, but someone else is going to kind of fill in. But for you Ingram Micro fans out there, they have a huge services division. It drives a lot of revenue for that
Mhm.
organization. But I thought that was interesting. And then actually Dell's back in the news, and we've talked about this kind of on and off over the past few months, right? The hybrid workforce. Well, Dell announced here in March that, or by March, they want all their employees, listen to this, they want all their employees back in the office and to be physically located within 1 hour of a Dell office. I thought that was interesting. And what happened over
Yeah.
bunch of people just kinda moved to Florida and moved around and be maybe by closer to family and friends or moved to Carl was here, he would have moved to Tahiti, right? He always talks about moving on the beach.
Right. Well, yeah, it's that part really caught my eye. I mean, the only time I've ever heard of people being required to live a certain distance from their employer is when it's a life and death situation. That even a lot of those have fallen by the wayside. Cities used to require that police officers live in the district, and fire fire officers too, but a lot of those things have gone away. And it's interesting to see Dell saying, "Oh no, all of our employees have to live within an hour. We don't want you commuting. We don't want you commuting any more than an hour." So they're dictating what your commute has to be, or the maximum commute that you can have to work. Really, really weird thing to do.
And we've talked about the pros and cons. I think you and I would agree. We think the magical balance is a little hybrid. Give your employees the choice of working remote or coming into the office. I like a little combination of both. I love that collaboration when you get together face to face in meetings. I get that. but a lot of us are used to being able to kind of call our own schedules. To me, the only caveat is as long as you're getting the results that you're required to get and that you have some kind of milestones or KPIs that you're keeping track of. But if you're getting the results, I'm not sure why that is so important. But
I don't know. Whenever I hear something like that, I just think to myself, old. Like the first word that comes into my head is either is old and incompetent. That's like two things. You're so old school. You don't have to be physically old or or particularly aged, but you have to be an old school middle manager of, my style of management is people are here with their rears in the seat, and that's how I know they're working. So old in the sense of you're not a good manager. You really don't understand the productivity of the people that you're managing, and you haven't figured it out. And it's been what we're like 4 years post COVID, and you guys still got people that haven't figured it out yet. It's study after study after study shows that people work more productively at home than they do in the office. And I ran an entirely remote business for 23 years, so I don't have any sympathy for people who say that they can't figure out if their employees are working or not. You know, you're not work. That's on you.
I'm, yes, I'm a little bit more old school because I've been in the industry for a long time. A lot of the businesses that I was a part of, we had big teams, big offices, and big brick and mortar. And we would, be the first one there in the morning, the last one to leave. And I agree with you. You don't have to be like that. I can maybe see like the innovation teams, R&D, leadership, strategy. I like the interaction when you do get face to face, but you can fly in and, you don't have to mandate every single employee lives within an hour of the office. That was really interesting. So we'll see where that goes. There's more and more companies doing that, big and small. I just was shocked. Dell, I've always thought of, being in Austin, Texas, being a little bit more of a liberal town, a little bit more progressive, high tech. I was shocked to see that. So we'll see how that turns out for them, if that's going to help them or hurt them.
Yeah, one of the benefits that COVID had out the other end was, like you said, people moved.
Yeah.
And they moved to smaller towns. It gave them opportunity to not necessarily be tied economically to having to live in a near a large city or in the suburbs. They could choose to live in the small towns, and it gave small towns a boost. This could potentially reverse that, you know. Oh.
Yeah, I'm not sure we want to go down this rabbit trail, but you remember when COVID hit, it just was such an interesting time. And I'm almost thinking more psychologically of like, who knows what's going to happen? Is everybody going to survive? It felt like this zombie apocalypse, at least for the first couple weeks. Nebraska being in the Midwest, less population, in a state of only 2 million people. The city I'm in is 1 million people, so it's telling, but everybody was so isolated, but only for a couple weeks, and it kinda slowly started coming back to normal. It wasn't like the big cities in California or New York where you were locked down, but I'll tell you, there was an element there where your priorities change, and, I was always work hard, play hard, but I remember thinking it's like, maybe I should buy that new boat. Hell, I wanna go enjoy the family more. Oh, maybe we're gonna, change, move. We moved. And, I think COVID was a big part of it because we spent so much time, intimate time with the family. It made you realize what's important in life. So anyway, we'll see where that turns out. But, back to your point, Amy, gosh, that was 4 years ago. So
Yep.
yeah. So that's interesting. I know the federal government is doing that as well. I think, that's a mandate happening this spring as well, where the employees in the federal workforce are going back, and supposedly only 7% were working in the office. I find that hard to believe. So more and more
It seems like a really low number to me, but, um
yeah, yeah. So we'll see where that goes, and then CrowdStrike was in the news again, but in a positive way. I don't know if
I
any
was gonna say, uh-oh.
Yeah, uh-oh. So, gosh, it was only a month or 2 ago when CrowdStrike was a four-letter word, right?
Mhm,
Boy, they got all sorts of horrible press, and then they've been on this campaign, this crusade, really, to keep their name in a positive. They unveil some new programs for security-minded MSPs, and they keep touting about how they're gonna give back and pour into the channel. So, to me, I started reading the article, and what hit me was not, "Oh, a new program that I need to learn more about." It was just, "Wow, CrowdStrike is doing a good job with their marketing in trying to save face," you know?
mhm.
I'm just impressed with that. So,
Yeah,
you know
their marketing folks are doing a really good job at that. They're bringing the company back, 'cause they did take a big hit. I mean, as a security company, having that kind of breach it's the worst case scenario for them. So, it's good to see them back on the up and up, and I actually do like seeing them, putting together new packages of services for MSPs because that was not a focus of theirs in the past, so it's I like to see that.
Great, great point. Yeah, they're really pouring back into, the channel. So and then kind of the last thing I wanted to bring up, Intel is still in the news, that, potential takeover is looming. There's more and more things I read this past week. Qualcomm is looking at them. Some other chip companies are looking at, they're just a prime target, I think, to be acquired. And to me, maybe James' question of the week to Amy is, if you had just an extra $1,000 laying around, would that be a good stock investment? You think if Intel gets taken over, is that gonna be a good thing or a bad thing? I mean, we all know what happened to NVIDIA years ago, a $1,000 in 2005
Mhm.
would have only made you $735,000. So, that's, uh,
Dang,
that's not too shabby. So,
not
I
too
just thought
shabby.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if Intel I mean, we talked about Intel last week, I think it was, and, you know, we both think it's a good company, even though they are struggling. They have an amazing research and development arm. So, but they're carrying a lot of baggage, as older companies do, of, this is the way we do things. This is the thing we produce. This is right. And when they get bought, a lot of times it does give them opportunity for kind of a fresh start because the buyer has no problem with throwing out some of that old stuff like chips, like processors for PCs. Intel's also really good at making chips. So, you know, will they be another NVIDIA? I don't know. NVIDIA does need a competitor. I'll say that. They do. And there are a couple, but they're so much smaller. So there's an opportunity certainly for Intel and whoever buys them there. Um, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I think you're right, James. Maybe it could be a good investment. Maybe I should go out to my account and put put a grand down on Intel. See what happens.
Grand here and there, We talk about that all the time in the mastermind group of, hey, if, people formed a Bitcoin investment club, and then we have a stock club in one of the Slack channels, and we always talk about random investments and things. But yeah, could be something. So pay close attention to what's looming out there in the news with Intel. So we will see. And I'm here with someone special today. We're going to talk about training, and I'm with Miss Melissa Hockenberry from First Things First Training and Consulting out of Pennsylvania. Hey, Melissa, welcome.
Thank you, James. Nice to be here. Appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Hey, great to connect with you again. We've had a couple conversations now, and I see you all over LinkedIn. So if you don't follow Melissa, make sure you do because she's a superstar. But it's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's training, it's customer experience, customer retention. We're going to talk about that today. But before I start with the questions on that side, tell everybody a little bit about yourself. How did you get in the industry, and give everybody a little background on yourself?
Training has been sort of a thread throughout my life, even straight out of college. So I landed in a Fortune 500 company out of school, and that was probably the best place to land for a general business major. Was to just sort of see how one of those companies works. And there's so many things that I didn't know the title for that I can say, oh, I experienced that. Yeah, I just didn't know it was called that. So at 22, 23, I was managing between 15 and 30 people, depending on where I landed, and a couple $1 million in merchandise. And so I got thrown in baptism by fire. I did not have the proper training program. Someone stole from the company and I got to take over their department. And so I think that ignited a passion to me to say, yes, this is great in some ways to dive in and just learn it as I could, but it also made me really passionate about making sure there's proper training for other people, because that can really break a person who could succeed in a role, is a lack of training. So that training seed was planted early, and very early in that company I became a corporate trainer, and I enjoyed that. And so as I moved through, my career landed me in nonprofit and then in a small tech company that some people may know, Autotask. I started there in 2004. There were 9 people that worked for the company when I started. And I went in there with that mentality of, I want to train. Like, I want a training position. And it took me about 8 years to get there. But every call I did in support of Autotask really turned into a training call. I saw it that way. I didn't turn it into a solve their problem and get them off the phone call. I always took the approach of, I want them to know more when we're done with this call.
Yeah, yeah, that's exciting. It's what a great opportunity for you at a young age to really get plugged into all of that. But everybody needs training on Autotask. It's such a beast. And so, real quick before we move on, how did you kind of gain the knowledge? Because it is a big program. There's a lot to it. I mean, I'm sure you lived it and you lived inside of Autotask, but in order to have that. To be able to train, obviously, you've got to know what you're talking about, and how did you immerse yourself in Autotask?
Yeah, it happened naturally from starting out in support. So I was hired as the first dedicated product support rep for the program. And so I became the only person that was, officially answering the phones, taking every ticket. And the person who hired me, Nikki Fredo, who's an amazing human, she, poured into me as much knowledge as she could. And then I just absorbed what I could through experience. So I sat with the developers, I understood the code, and that was just the coolest part. And so that made me a really thorough trainer because I lived and breathed it. So I came through support, and then I was in implementation, and then I worked on customer retention. I like to call that job when I chased the hearse. So generally, I was talking to everyone who wanted to leave. And that taught me a lot about the software, right? Where did people go wrong? Where did the software go wrong? So to say I had like a 360 view is by no means an understatement. And then in 2012, I took on the process of actually building a bona fide training department, which was me for several years. And I did up to 20 webinars a month as a single individual. And everyone always, yes, I didn't know any better, James. I was just like, well, this is what we need to, cover the whole process. And then I got a team of a couple people and we cut that back drastically and we really focused. And I learned organically, really. There's no one that trained me. I am the daughter of educators. So my mom was a first grade teacher, my dad was a teacher and an educator. So I think it's somewhat in my blood to think in a didactic uh, process. But yeah, so I worked with that for 6 years. I Autotask in total 18 and a half years, but progressed into training and then community. And yeah, loved the progression, loved the opportunity, and loved the opportunity to hold 10 different positions in that time frame.
Now it makes a lot more sense. You come from an education or educator background with your folks, and then that extensive experience. And again, everybody, 20 webinars per month. This is pre Microsoft Copilot, pre ChatGPT. So,
Yes.
custom creation of content by herself. She had to really learn it. So, all right. So let's fast forward. Tell everybody a little bit more about your current company. First things first, training and consulting.
Right. So when I chose to sort of step out, I for me it was a faith thing. There was something I was sort of called to be doing something different. And
Mhm.
I thought, what can I do? And immediately I thought of the auto test side of things, but I knew there was, auto test does that side. I really had always felt like I wanted to get deeper with clients into making their business better. And my time and retention taught me a lot about I call it I did a video that said, are you creating any customer repulsion scenarios? Like, are you literally repelling clients? Because I think sometimes we don't, as business operators, we don't think about how certain things are just going to repel a client, right? It's written all over it to anyone who's outside of it, but they're not seeing it themselves. So, as I started to step out, I thought I'm passionate about customer experience. And that's a word some people know really well, but it's a term, to be honest, I think has been bastardized because we've talked about user experience and we make it synonymous with customer. And it's not. Customer experience is like, what do you look like to somebody who doesn't even know you need them? They need you, rather. The whole way through to what do you look like once you've been offboarded and they no longer use your services for a year? What does that look like, that entire journey? So I'm passionate about that. But when it comes down to it, owners, I understand, are passionate about retention. And that's what experience does. Good experience retains customers. And I always say that, rapport builds retention and retention builds revenue. And so when I started to talk to more people, I thought, this is really about retention. But when somebody wants to geek out with me, I'm happy to talk about an entire experience.
Good, good. Well, and then obviously you consult way outside of it's just on Autotask now. So you're
Right.
all over the place
Yeah,
now.
exactly. I don't actually, I'll tell clients, people will contact me about Autotask and I'll say, I am not an Autotask consultant. What I can do is I can tell you how to better run your business. And the benefit is going to be, I understand your PSA if you happen to be an Autotask client. I do have clients that use different things. I do work with MSPs that are using some different things. And I'm great with that because really I don't pretend to understand Autotask inside and out like I used to. I'm almost 3 years of the company, and even my last few roles were very much not as ingrained in the product. So I will always turn people back to, hey, there's probably somebody knows that answer, or I actually know more resources. I think a lot of people don't realize that product is all of the online resources are available publicly. So if you put into Google nowadays, can this be done? It's going to pull from the Autotask online documentation and give you an answer. So what I focus much more on is what can I help you with in a business to retain revenue? And then yes, there's going to be this benefit if you happen to use Autotask, but having been so intimately connected to a PSA, I am finding that really does still transfer because I may not know the words in ConnectWise or Halo or something like that, but I can still say, hey, this might impact X, Y, and Z. I don't know the terms for that particular software, but I can tell you that you want to go look at that. So that's a benefit I have having grown up in the software world.
Nice, nice. Okay. And then the trainings that you do provide, it sounds like it's highly customized. So that you kind of go in, you assess the situation, and then you put training in place that's all customized around what tools they use and what their current situation is, right?
Right. So I'm looking specifically at, in a lot of cases, it's sort of like I had the approach when I started with support, right? I was dealing with what the presenting problem, right? There's a ticket in for this, but I always tried to leave people with a little bit more education. So a typical client will come to me with maybe it's something where it's not scalable right now. Hey, Melissa, we have these processes, but we are growing and all of a sudden things are starting to fall through the cracks. Like we know we need documentation. We know we need to improve on this, but how do we do that? And so that's when we'll start to break it down. And any suggestion I'm going to give, I'm always going to give people the why because I'm a why person. And I don't think people motivate nearly as well with a go and do as they do this is why I need you to go and do, right? And then they start to think and process. And so that's kind of my approach.
I completely agree. You always need to explain why. I mean, it's part of our leadership training that we talk about because people want to understand, the purpose behind why you're doing what you're doing. That's excellent. And then do you have any kind of, I don't wanna call it off the shelf, but do you have any standardized training where it's kinda one to many? You provide that as well also, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm launching this spring a customer retention sort of assessment where people can come to a webinar and see how many components of a retention program do you actually have in place already, and where would you need to get started. So that'll be a free webinar. I'm planning on giving it at this point probably monthly. But it gives people an understanding of where am I on this journey of actually being able to say I have a retention program in place. And then, of course, like I say, I'm always happy to talk about the bigger journey. But I think what is bite-sized for most MSPs is thinking of a retention program. And this is not, please know, if we start to say retention success, this is not VCIO. This is not this. This is legitimately somebody who is building rapport. You have people that are focused on building rapport with the client. Do they work on your tech alignment? Do they get you project revenue? Yes, but their focus is really rapport, retention, which gives you that revenue.
Right. And then when we're talking about rapport and retention, is the training more for technicians and help desk personnel, or is it more for salespeople, or could it be for both?
It could be for both. I think some of the best people to get on board with this are kind of your operations people because they're touching everything, right? Like I see an operations manager coming into this and going, yeah, now this is what I need to do. And so is some of that going to roll down to sales? Definitely. Is some of it going to roll down to technicians? So if you have a person wearing many hats, I would say that whoever's wearing the hat of operations is probably one of the best targets for this because they're going to be able to get the checklist. They're going to be able to assess and take a look. I'm working with a client right now, and it's the operations person I'm working most with who's seeing the need to get momentum around this effort. So I think that's probably it. But yes, anybody who is trying to understand, let us not create processes that repel clients. If you have that, anybody, any arena that they're in, they could come and gain some value from this.
Perfect. Okay. And can you give everybody, so let's go a little bit deeper, give everybody like a mini example of when you come in and do a training, you kind of assess the scenario, and then what would the training look like? How long would it be? Is it remote, on site? What does it look like?
Right. So those are flexible things. What we basically do, our approach is that my biggest approach is that I want to save time, money, resources for you right off the bat. So I want to absorb what you already believe you have from a retention standpoint. So if I start to engage with a client, I'm going to ask you, what documentation do you have? Now, don't throw me to your IT glue, right? To say, oh, we have this process. That's great for the technical. I'm always going to look for what is your operational process documentation. If I have a client who calls in to dispute their invoice, do I have a checklist of the things I should be looking for? So I want to gather all of that first and try to consume that offline because your time is incredibly important and your team's time is billable. So to me, I first absorb as much as I can and sort of assess where I think you are. And then there are meetings with, and the meetings would be with leadership and stakeholders in the process to assess what they think the problem is. And I stress that, what they think the problem is. And then I take that, pull it together, and I put it in front of the frontline people. It's really important to me to talk to the people that are in the trenches because I do think the answers usually exist there. And so we combine these two. So I have a meeting then with the in the trenches people. And again, there's always the stakeholder, the person who's owning the effort is in both of those meetings. And then that's when we start to develop what does this look like and what documentation are we missing and how will we follow this process? And that's where the training comes into play of like, okay, then once we've determined how we're going to do it, then let's talk about how we get this out to the rest of the team. And I looked at something recently, Crew who does a customer bill of rights, and they talk about the nevers and the always. And I think that's a great way to think about things is like when you're talking about retention and experience, we're never going to do this and we're always going to do this. So kind of working through that and getting some what I'm calling sort of bylaws of how you conduct yourself so that there is that parameter for anyone in the company to know, well, we never do that. So if I did that, that would be against our bylaw, but we always do this. So when those situations pop up that somebody doesn't know how to deal with, when the documentation isn't there on something new, the training is about helping kind of indoctrinate them into a mindset of retention and rapport building.
Love it. Love it. That's great. That's great. So exciting stuff. So tell us what's coming up for you. I know your company's growing. You're bringing on lots of clients and projects. What's coming up for you? Where can people find you out in the channel?
Right. So what I love doing is things like this. I love to connect on podcasts and share things out there, but I'm also getting the opportunity to be on stage. One of my favorite places to do is to actually train in front of people, that post 2020 thing that we get to do. So I'm going to be at MSP GeekCon, which is in Orlando, Florida, in the first Sunday through, I should know those dates, but Sunday through Tuesday of May, which is May 4th through the 6th. And so I'll be talking there about how people put things into place. And then I'm doing several more podcasts. And I will have the webinar that if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll be able to see the announcements of that and the opportunity to register for the webinar that helps you assess where you are in your retention efforts.
And hopefully, we're going to have you at the mastermind event the end of June. So looking forward to you sharing there as well in person at that mastermind live event. So that's exciting as well. Awesome. So we'd thank you for your time. I want you to make sure you share the best place for people to connect with you. It sounds like it's on LinkedIn.
Yes, definitely. Just look for me on LinkedIn and follow there. Connect. Feel free to reach out to connect and but follow. You'll get some little tidbits of knowledge, usually less than a minute, about once a week that I drop a video to give you how I approach things.
Okay. So look up Melissa Hockenberry with First Things First Training and Consulting on LinkedIn, or you can reach out to our office and I'm happy to share the information, but we'll try to get that up in the show notes as well. But hey, Melissa, so good to see you again. You're always such a bright spirit, sharing positivity in the channel and conducting training, which is so desperately needed in the channel. So thank you.
Thanks, James. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I know it's been a busy week and a busy month for you. You've got your class starting today. I've got that M&A class starting next week. So looking forward to that. I love teaching, just like I know you do. So I'm looking forward to doing that classroom-driven M&A session. So anything else that you wanted to highlight before we depart today?
My first speaking engagement's coming up in a couple weeks here. So yeah, excited to get my AI class going. My first in-person speaking engagement is over at the Microsoft 365 users group in Grand Rapids in mid-February. And then, that's going to be kind of when the year gets going, right? I've really been focused on getting my class off the ground. And then first speaking engagement hits, and then the year will get rolling.
Yeah, I've got a little treat for next week. We don't have time to dive into it today, but next week we'll go through. There's a lot of channel events coming up here late spring. So we'll highlight those. There's probably about 10 of them that we'll roll through. So break out the pencil and take a look at your calendar for these dates coming up. But all right.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'll go through that next week, but good to see you. Thanks for your input, Amy, as always. And if any of you have any questions, comments, anything that Amy and I can dissect for you and talk about, please send it over to james@kernanconsulting.com. We'd love to hear from you. We frequently get messages, and there was a fun message. A little shout out goes to Nick. Nick, I had a fun conversation with you last week. Nick listens to the podcast on a weekly basis and claims he's got his headphones on, jamming out to the SMB Community Podcast as he's working out. So shout out to Nick. So good to hear from you. All right, everybody. Yeah, thank you. All right, gang. We'll catch up with you all next time.